But I am also jealous of this next man because he's just so damn good at what he does. Broadcast reporter and writer whose work has appeared on ESPN and Fox Sports, Manouk Akopyan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm on a panel of extraordinary gentlemen, and we have an extraordinary fight coming up, so looking forward.
What was your immediate thoughts when you saw that Spence fell off and we get Ugas in this situation? Obviously, I think everybody was a little disappointed, but totally different fighter, different situation here for Manny. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely anticlimactic. I mean, Manny hasn't fought in 2 years since he scored a split decision win over Keith Thurman. I mean, another turn back the clock performance, and he arguably took the toughest test that he could have in a comeback fight at 42. And now he's presented a trap fight of sorts where it's a high-risk, low-reward fight that, quite frankly, none of the top fighters take these days. And again, you got to give credit for Manny because he is telling the fighters in the younger generation how it's done. He takes every challenge that is presented to him, and the guy just loves to fight. And you got to give credit to that. But on the flip side, I mean, the more as the days roll by, more information comes out about Errol Spence's injury, and as it turns out, it's a detached retina and not a torn retina. So the severity of that injury, as it was reported, it seems like a very big deal. And the fact that Pacquiao promised that Spence would get the fight eventually, at this point, nothing is guaranteed. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Manny wants to guide his career at the very, very tender age of 42.
What do you think about his style that could be a problematic for Manny?
Yeah, I mean, Ugas is from the revered Cuban national team, but he is not your prototypical Cuban fighter because he goes in the middle of the ring and he stands and bangs. I mean, that Porter fight, like Dan said, I believe Ugas won that fight and he was robbed and didn't get the decision. And he was, if you look at the highlights, he's in the middle of the ring, standing and banging with Porter. And Porter is a pit bull. He's a dog. And he made things very uncomfortable for Porter that night. And I feel like Manny is that kind of a fighter. When you bring the fight to him, all he knows how to do is fight back. And I don't think, and if you bring the fight to Manny, he's not going to back off. So I really see this being, it could be a sneaky, entertaining fight. And, you know, if the WBA has another bad night of scoring like we've seen in recent weeks, we might have some scorecards from hell that might take everyone by storm. That's for sure.
We've seen so many different scenarios that have been talked about, and a lot of them are probably fantasy, but could you see one of those come into reality?
I don't see it becoming a reality because I asked Manny firsthand when I made a visit to the Wild Card Gym a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him if exhibition matches for the sake of entertainment interest him, and he said no because he really believes that the quality of the matchups aren't where they need to be, and he feels that he still has a fight left in him. So he flat out told me he's not interested in exhibition matches. If he were to fight Conor McGregor, should McGregor have not lost to Poirier, it would have been an actual boxing match, but that train has passed, and I don't think it'll be coming back. The interesting thing about Manny right now is, again, the presidential candidacy, and he theoretically can use his fighting career as his PR train to run for president. He could literally get votes while he's fighting and use that as from a PR perspective. And contractually, there's a lot of gray areas to how many fights Manny Pacquiao has left with PBC, how many fights he has left in himself altogether. And the fact that he was entertaining fights with Ryan Garcia and Terrence Crawford and PBC and Conor McGregor, that tells me Manny Pacquiao can fight anyone at any time, any place. And frankly, that should be the music to the ears of boxing fans because we're not going to see too many more times with him in the ring. And if he wants to go out there and pick the hardest challenges, by all means, you know, we would have loved to see that Crawford fight 5 years ago when they were both signed under Top Rank. But, you know, Bob Arum, for reasons unknown, said he didn't want to put him in there, and now he wants to stage the fight. So, all credit due to the legend that is Manny Pacquiao, and however he wants to pick and choose his opponents and put the fights together, by all means, as long as we get to see it one more time in action.
And Manouk, I'm going to shoot it right over to you, man. Same exact question. Give me some of your best Pac-Man moments.
Oh, absolutely. The beauty about Manny Pacquiao is I can be the third one in line, and the guys have talked about 80% of the body of his work, and there's still so many more fights to talk about. The one that stands out for me personally is Antonio Margarito. When he went out there at 154 pounds, a 108-pound fighter going all the way up to the climax of his weight classes. He's an 8-division champion, of course, the only one in boxing history. And he ended up beating and bludgeoning Margarito pretty much into retirement, fracturing his face. And at that point in Margarito's career, he came out to be a dirty fighter after what he had done to Miguel Cotto in those fights. So for him to actually serve justice to the sport by beating a dirty fighter and doing it in such a devastating fashion because of the size difference and the sheer magnitude of how bad he beat him up. I think that was one of his finest hours. And another reason why is because it kind of opened the doors for Dallas and the AT&T Stadium to be a big boxing market, because Manny Pacquiao was one of the first fighters to really open that venue up, and it's opened the doors for Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence ever since, and it's a really hotbed for big-time boxing. I know this fight's taking place in Las Vegas, where all the big fights take place, but outside of the Staples Center, AT&T Stadium in Dallas is kind of like that third venue, from the West Coast, Midwest standpoint. And Pacquiao helped build that market up with his early fights in his career.
All right, Manouk, I'm coming to you. And who do you think takes it here? Who gets their hand raised there at the T-Mobile Arena?
I'll get straight to the point. I think Pacquiao is going to win by unanimous decision. Obviously, his power has not carried up to 147 pounds, and naturally so. He's just a small guy, and 15 out of his last 16 fights have ended in unanimous decision. Miguel Cotto was the only one he ended up putting away in between, and essentially he needs to make sure he just doesn't get caught, because if he gets caught by the bigger fighter, it's very likely he could get hurt. And we saw the last time he was hurt, it was when Marquez just flatlined him, and it was a scary knockout. But for this fight, I think Pacquiao plays it safe, and he fights when he needs to, and he outboxes Ugas to a unanimous decision.